Welcome back to the Week 8 college football betting locks and predictions, and let's get right into it with a recap of last week. We lost 2.2 units, 1.2 of which was from the Juice with a 11-12 record. So we will look to hop back into our winning ways this week. In total, we're still up an impressive 13.4 units on the season, but let's get back into the green this week. But first, a recap of last week. Ohio State at Illinois. Illinois just couldn't hang. Ohio State looked very impressive in this one and essentially just blows out Illinois. They just could not stop the Buckeyes in that one, so that does not cover for us. Missouri stays close enough with a little backdoor cover against Bama in this one and covers our 3.5 there. Nebraska does not beat Maryland by enough points. They win by 3 and do not cover our 5 in the hook there. Northern Illinois could not get past Eastern Michigan in that one and fails to cover for us. North Texas against South Florida. Very impressive showing by South Florida in this one. Just blew up North Texas. It was competitive early, but South Florida just pulled away. Golish's team there, very impressive, and I think they're the best team in the group of 5 at this moment. Kansas, Texas Tech, we placed a little lock on Kansas late in the week. Thought that Kansas could provide some resistance to this Texas Tech offense, and they could not. They get blown out in that one in Lubbock and are unable to cover the 14 in the hook. We had a Friday night lock with Rutgers at Washington. Washington is able to pull away in that one and cover our 9.5 there. Next page, NC State at Notre Dame. We correctly picked that Notre Dame would win. Not a very challenging pick there. Iowa State at Colorado, and I did also predict this upset there. Unfortunately, no betting lock, even though I hinted at it in the last video. Should have pulled the trigger on that one, but the Buffaloes get the win over in Boulder. And then Air Force against UNLV. Crazy game here in the 50s. I knew there would be no defense, and I was right. Air Force almost wins, but UNLV gets away with it in the last minute again, and I will be talking about their showdown with Boise State later in the video. Florida at Texas A&M, and this just looked like a spent Florida team. Lagway was not good enough. 4 fumbles, they recovered 2 of them, but this Florida team, it was just over for them, and they did not have anything after the first quarter on offense. Very few yards, and it was just Texas A&M's game. They completely snuffed out anything Florida had, and I think this is it for Billy Napier. They've got plenty more challenging games on the schedule from here on out, but it just looked like Florida had given up. We got the 1 week bounce in the Texas game, but I think Florida's chances have evaporated after this loss. Texas A&M, disciplined game, only 3 penalties. I was talking about the penalties as the way that Florida could get into this one and keep it close for the cover. They do not and fail to cover our 8 in the hook there. Indiana, very impressive win at Oregon. I thought for sure Oregon would win that game, but Indiana was just the better team in that one. You know, you do have to kind of question how good Oregon is at this point because the only marquee win they have is over Penn State. Obviously, we've seen where that team has trended in the past 2 weeks. So we'll keep an eye on Oregon there, but very impressive win for Coach Sig and the boys there. Arkansas against Tennessee. Arkansas able to stay close enough to cover our 10 in that one. It's a desperate Razorback squad, and Tennessee hasn't really pulled away against any of these opponents. They're now 5-1 and have played in a lot of close games, so we'll keep an eye on them going forward in the very competitive SEC. Oklahoma against Texas. Texas wins in a blowout there. The defense provided a lot in terms of stopping Oklahoma, and then the punt return touchdown, and the offense got going a little bit there for the Longhorns, and they look good. Texas -1 in the hook there as they are starting to ramp up quickly right there. Next page, Georgia at Auburn in a terribly officiated game. A lot going on there. Auburn was unable to cover in that one and does not stay within the 3.5. USC, an impressive blowout of Michigan in this one at the Coliseum, and they moved to 5-1 on the season. The defense looked good, and they were just better on the fronts than Michigan was in that football game. BYU at Arizona. Arizona does not win that game. BYU actually comes up with it in what was a pretty thrilling game there. South Carolina actually loses to LSU by exactly 10, so we got our first push of the season in that one. Arizona State does not stay within 10 at Utah in the altitude at Salt Lake. Bowling Green does cover for our 10.5, though, in that one. And then final page, we just have a lot of locks here, but I'll talk about some of the highlights. UCLA at Michigan State. Michigan State, we were taking the candy with full game. UCLA has just scaled up and looks really good right now. They're a completely different team from a few weeks ago, and we will see if they can provide that spark 3 weeks in a row, which is typically very difficult to do in college, especially as they've just crossed the country. But this looks like a new team, and they look very impressive in that one. So let's move to the Week 8 locks, and let's start with Louisville at Miami. We're going to take the candy with Louisville plus from 14. To be honest, the thesis here is all about the candy here. I think Miami gets a little bit complacent because there's really no way that this should be a game with Louisville and Miami here, because Miami has just looked strong. Their O-line, D-line, both fronts, the offense looks great, and the defense has done well so far. I think Louisville can move the ball against the Miami secondary, but realistically, it's a tough call to make because not very many teams have been able to do that. Realistically, I think Louisville's defense can get enough of stop Carson Beck and this explosive Miami offense enough to keep this one lower scoring. I like the under here, and I especially like Louisville plus 14. I wouldn't be surprised if this lands on the number, but I think that they stay within. Nebraska at Minnesota. Nebraska's the better team here. I think some people have kind of forgotten about Nebraska's win over Cincinnati, which looks a lot better now over these past few weeks. But I like Raiola and Nebraska to win that one. Minnesota hasn't really impressed me so far this season. They do have the 4-2 record, 2-1 in the Big Ten, but their defense just isn't that good. I will continue to say it. I think Nebraska puts enough points up and wins that game. Desperation spot in South Carolina in October there at Williams-Brice. I think Oklahoma bounces back and Mateer and co. get the win there, despite both teams being against the wall. We've got a lot of games like this where the spot kind of sets up well for both teams, but I like Oklahoma to get through the challenges on the road and win that football game there. Then we've got LSU at Vandy. Very good game here. Vandy's actually favored, and I like them to win. Vandy's offense is far more explosive than LSU this season, and I think that they just run past them. LSU just cannot move the ball. The Vandy defense, I actually think they're pretty good, but I don't think LSU will be able to run the ball enough here to win. And then putting it in Us's hands seems like a strategy to lose this game in the long run here. I like Pavia and Vandy to take care of that. Watch for a betting lock down the road in this week if we can get a number like sub 1 or at a pick 'em, but I'll just ride with Vandy to win right now. Georgia Tech at Duke. A lot of people are going to like this spot for Duke, but I'm just going to take Georgia Tech. I've done this with Duke all year. They've looked impressive in league play so far, but I think Georgia Tech is just the better team here. It's a great spot for Duke at home. Should be a tougher environment. And, of course, Georgia Tech hasn't had that main blemish, so maybe Duke can uncover something. But I like Georgia Tech to win in a closer one there on the road. It's always tough in conference play. Washington against Michigan. I like Michigan to win this one. Washington coming across the country off a win on a slightly longer week, so maybe that balances out some of the effects, but Michigan bouncing back from the USC loss. I think that there is some offense to be had on this injury-riddled Washington team. I think Michigan just outscores Washington on the way to a win in the big house there in the bounce back after the loss. Next page, we've got Arizona at Houston, kind of a marquee Big 12 game. I think Houston is a little overrated here, and I do not think that this home field is good at all in the Big 12 here for Houston. I like Arizona's offense to take the day here. I don't really respect either of these defenses, so let's go Arizona in a high-scoring one there. Baylor at TCU, a little rivalry game here. I like Baylor to go in on the road and win. Sawyer Robertson and co., I think, can put up some offense against this TCU secondary. The Baylor defense is pretty bad too, so this should just be an easy over game, but I prefer Baylor's offense in this one. I think that they will be successful in both the run and passing games on this TCU secondary and brittle front. UNLV at Boise State. I think Boise State wins easy. That's pretty consensus. The line is 10 now, but don't fall into the trap of UNLV with their undefeated record. They've scraped by in these games. The turnovers are going to regress at some point, and I think Boise State wins this one easy up in Boise there. TAMU at Arkansas. We're going to go Hogs +7 in the hook. Obviously, it's just about how hard and how much gas Arkansas has in the tank, but they've played some competitive games, especially that Tennessee one as of late. I think the penalties creep back in for Marcel Reed and this Texas A&M team back on the road here. This is the start of a 3-week road stretch for Texas A&M after being in the safety of home. Maybe they forgot how to travel. I would doubt it. The sharp among you might realize that Texas A&M beat Notre Dame, and obviously Notre Dame did what they did to Arkansas, but every game is different. And I think Arkansas has a little fight here. I don't think they actually get the win. I think they lose by 7, and we get the best of the number there. Ole Miss against Georgia. I'm kind of wishing upon a star for this line. It's sitting at 6 in the hook, and the books don't typically turn over a 7 in a spot like this. But I do like Ole Miss in this game. I think 7 is a great number to get them that. We might even go with 6.5 later in the week. Tune into the Discord in the top right for that. But I like Ole Miss there. I think that they're better and can score against this Georgia defense that really isn't all that. The pass rush just isn't there, and I think that the Ole Miss offense is far more dynamic and can get the win on the road in that one, albeit in a tougher environment there. I think SMU gets smoked by Clemson here. Clemson, heavy favorite in this game, back in Death Valley. I think SMU's a little overrated. I've been betting against them some of the last few weeks here with only fair results, but I think Clemson wins this one pretty easy. The talent profile is there's just a discrepancy in the talent profile, and I think SMU's defense is far worse in that game. Pitt at Syracuse. We're going to go with Syracuse plus 11 in the hook. Pitt coming off a huge win last week against FSU. Letdown spot here, classic. And then as Syracuse, there's too much candy here with the backup quarterback. I like to bet on backup quarterback, so I think Syracuse stays within the 11 in the hook. I think Pitt probably wins this game, but it's much closer than the books are indicating right now. Mizzou at Auburn, and this is just a head-scratching line just looking at it, but, I mean, this is it for Hugh Freeze. If they lose this game, I think he's canned potentially on the Sunday afterwards, and this is just brutal because Auburn, first of all, they've gotten some schedule losses in there, and then also you've just gotten terrible officiating in all of their games. I think the officiating reverts, and Auburn wins this game outright. Their protection has to hold up. They give up way too many sacks. I think it can. Very similar game plan to the Georgia game, just slow it down, make it into a muck, make it into a rock fight, and hope that the refs don't mess it up for you in that one. I think Auburn wins in a gotta-have-it game, but we'll see if they are just simply spent after that Georgia game there. Utah at BYU, the rivalry game here, and I'll go with Utah on the road. I think they're the better team overall. BYU's gotten a bit lucky to still be 6-0 at this point. I like Utah to win that game there. Then Mississippi State at Florida. Again, I've indicated that I think that Florida has given up on the season now. This is it. Napier's already dead either way. They've got Mississippi State now. Maybe they win this game, and then Napier gets another week after the bye week, but it seems like it's all done at this point that he's going to be fired there. Realistically, I think Mississippi State's a better team coming off the bye here, and I think that they get this win, and I don't think Florida puts up much of a fight at the Swamp, not playing a ranked team there. Final page, Tennessee at Bama, third Saturday in October. I like Tennessee plus 9 in the hook. It's pretty consensus that Tennessee is a little, I will say, overranked here just because they've squeaked out some close wins. They did play Georgia close. It's debatable how good Georgia is, but this defense of Tennessee is an issue, and they are going to get torched by Alabama. I just think it's too many points. Bama's has not been pulling away from these teams either. See the Vandy and Mizzou games, and the thesis here is at some point, all these highly ranked games just add up and take a toll on you. Georgia, Vandy, Mizzou, all in a row. All three are great teams. Bama's won all three. I think that this one is far closer. It always is in a rivalry game. I like Tennessee plus 9 in the hook there. I think Alabama does win it outright, but that's way too many points, so we will take the candy there. And then another similar spot, I think Notre Dame probably wins this game, but USC plus 8.5 is good enough for me. We saw that defense scale up against Michigan. I was very impressed by that. And this Notre Dame defense and secondary are very gettable for this dynamic USC offense. I think that USC scores enough to win. I think the defense probably takes a half step back after looking very impressive in that Michigan game, but still enough to stay within the number in a tough, hostile environment in the rivalry game there. Old Dominion at James Madison. Big game in the Sun Belt. Could have some action later this week. Tight spread here, but Old Dominion screens better on both offense and defense for me. We'll see what difference the crowd makes there at JMU, but I will go with Old Dominion for my pick in that game. Then Texas Tech against ASU. At ASU, this spread is still in the mid-teens. That's just how much better Texas Tech is than the rest of the Big 12. Very impressive what they're doing there. Arizona State, little bounce back spot here. I'm not so sure. I like Texas Tech to win that one, even on the road there at Mountain America. Thank you for watching. Please be sure to like and subscribe and comment your predictions below.